about where things stand.
We have conversations all the time with all our players. There's good communication going back and forth through multiple avenues. So we'll see what happens next week and where we're at, So I can answer that for you next week.
All right, by next week, the expectation, of course, is that he will have been dealt. Julio limited to just 9 games last year. He last played all 16 games in a season quite some time ago. He's done it just 4 times in his career. The 32-year-old ranks 20th on the NFL's all-time receiving list, despite only playing in 135 career games. So I guess the question, Chris Canty, is he worth giving up what someone's going to give up for him? Is Julio Jones a player who next year could be the difference in some team making it to the Super Bowl?
Oh, he absolutely is, Greeny. I mean, there are no questions about Julio Jones outside of the injury concerns. And he only played in 9 games last year. But even with that small sample size, he was still able to find himself in the top 20 in broken tackles on receptions. And that's a group that includes tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs. So he's still a threat for yards after catch. And also in the 6 seasons prior to 2020, he was a guy that was 1,400 yards receiving or more in each one of those seasons while only missing a combined 4 games. So, yeah, Julio Jones is worth giving up a high draft pick. He could be the difference in a team being just a team that sneaks into the playoff to a team that could be a true title contender.
Well, Kimberly, I mean, you were saying the other day, though, that those, are the concerns that teams out there have. You're talking about his age. You're talking about that injury history. That is a legitimate concern. What do you hear from people around the sport, Kimberly?
Yeah, no. And the salary. Listen, I think there's a difference between the question of whether Julio is a talented number 1 wideout who could impact a roster versus if you're a GM and you have to gauge whether he's worth it, whether it's worth it to the organization to bring him in to commit this kind of money to a 32-year-old who does have injury history. I think those are 2 separate things. If it's your job, your team, your reputation, your draft capital, is that something you want to do? Clearly, he's a phenomenal player, but you also have to be mindful of the age and the injury because you can't say, because here's the caveat, it's if Julio is healthy, he's money. Whoever he goes to, they're golden. If he's healthy, that's a huge caveat.
Yeah, so Jeff, how do you see it?
Yeah, listen, he'd be perfect in a place like San Francisco, right, where he's going to be complimentary. Or we talked about Tennessee earlier, right, where he compliments A.J. Brown. He's not the guy you're going to go in. He's going to be year 1. He's your guy going all the time. So when you talk about him in that perspective, could he push those teams into true contending for a Super Bowl? That's what you're looking for. If you're a GM, you know whether you give up a 2nd-round pick or a 3rd-round pick for Julio, it's worth it to push you over. He's not a guy you're going to build around. And here's the thing. You have to know coming in with the limited amount of games he's played, that also means practice time is going to be missed. So understanding how does he fit from Monday through Saturday as well as game days, all of that plays into the culture of your building. Are you strong enough for your young guys to watch that, still want to come out and produce and practice and do those things? That all goes into the general manager's conversation with the head coach of what can they tolerate. But once he gets there, he is a dude. Do not mistaken because he's been injured, he can't make plays. He can make plays. He makes plays before the catch and after the catch. It's just he needs to be an addition to a team to really push them into contending.
Chris.
The reason why I say Julio is still a number 1 receiver is because if he's lined up outside of the numbers, you got to account for him with 2 defenders. It can't just be one guy. And because he can dictate front and coverage, that's where the real value is in adding Julio Jones, especially if you're a team that's already a playoff caliber squad. So to me, it's the no-brainer. If it's talking about giving up a 1st-round draft pick, you go ahead and pay that premium. You pay the salary coming from the Atlanta Falcons just because you know that he represents the difference between your team being a true title contender versus not.
Kimberly is working the phones all morning long. We're expecting something on this potentially as soon as today. Meanwhile, the other situation in the NFL we have our eyes on, what happens if Aaron Rodgers continues to be a no-show? We'll tell you why everything has suddenly changed in Green Bay. Plus, sneaky big news. What the
really is fun about it, but it was fantastic to watch him and describe the confusion on his face. That was absolutely beautiful.
I think that's exactly right. That's one of those that you admit after you win the Super Bowl, not before.
That's
and with
right.
that, We rack up a new hour here of Get Up, as always, coming to you live from the Seaport District in New York City. We are brought to you by Chase, and we are jam-packed. Here we come with the menu for hour number 2. It's time to get up with Final Bows. This young star took one on Broadway. Will LeBron's Lakers bow out tonight? Then his team is back on the field, but still no sign of Aaron. We'll tell you exactly how everything changed in this superstar stare down. And then, any minute now, one team will make the call that could change everything. We're on Julio Watch as we get up with you, starting right now with the game of the night and the performance of the night from Luka Doncic. Mavs, Clippers, Game 5, series tied at 2. We're in LA, and Luka Doncic was spectacular all night long. Fourth quarter, Mavs a 4-point lead. Luka sizing it up and unstoppable. He had 42 points on the night, plus 14 assists, including this one for Porzingis in the corner. Porzingis had a quiet night, but the Mavs had a 10-point lead. About a minute and a half left. Clippers down by 7. Marcus Morris not going away. Those are 3 of his 16. It's a 4-point game. Later, same score. Kawhi, he would score 20. 3 of them coming here after the free throw. It's a 1-point game. Ensuing Mavs possession. Whatever you do, don't turn it over. Whatever you do, don't turn it over. We're going the other way. Paul George, down by 1. Closing possession. Going to give it up. Nicholas Batum. What have you got? Oh, it's that close. But it doesn't fall. Clippers forced a foul. Mavs would make both. 3-point game. Rondo inbounding. Kawhi Leonard in the corner for the tie. And it's no good. And Luka's 42 are enough. Mavericks get the win. No home team has won a game in this series. 105-100 Dallas, a 3-2 series lead. Meanwhile, Madison Square Garden last night. Knicks trying to stave off elimination against Trae Young and the Hawks. This whole series has been chippy. End of the half. Trae Young and Nerlens Noel saying a little hello. How we doing here? In total, 3 texts, 1 flagrant, 16 personal given out on the first half. Atlanta, a 5-point halftime lead, and then they own the third quarter in this series, and once again they would use that period to put it away. That's Clint Capella. He had 14 points, 15 boards. That's Bogdanovich with a 3. Atlanta pulling away, and here comes Trae Young with the range. Hawks up 12 after 3 quarters. Trae would score 36 points, 18 of them in the fourth. Here's Young, a little blow by, scoop it up off the glass, and then telling the Garden crowd, you know, I'm sending you all home unhappy tonight. Right, here we go. Hawks now closing minute. Fans